Welcome back, guys. Where have I been? I've been trying to keep ahead of the painter. The painter was here for 8 days, and before he arrived I pulled lots of things apart, did lots of repairs like in this corner, which has turned out well. After the paint's gone, I've been putting back things like light switches, curtains, doing a bit of a deep clean. And what's going on? We're thinking of selling our house and property, and of course the shed. So it's going to be crazy busy till the end of the year, and I've really started to wonder if it's going to be this Christmas I get the boat in the water. So I've done a bit of a list and tried to put a time to each job left, and it's quite clear there are some jobs which aren't essential, like you can go sailing without squabs, just throw in a bit of foam. That'll do that job, for example. So there are things where I can cut corners to get in the water this summer coming, but it's only 19 weeks away, and my jobs tally up to a bit more than that if I do them all, if the boat's pretty finished. So I'm going to go over all the jobs with you, and be interesting to see what your estimates are for some of the things I've given times to, and you might strongly advise me, look, priorities first, sell the property or whatever, but it's a pretty high priority for me to get the boat in the water. I'm 67 and I'm really feeling the need to get this summer in sailing, so it's been a bit hard not to have a boat in the water in the last summer or two. So let's get on with the job list and give it some times and see where we can cut some corners and what time things will take. And for some of the jobs, I know I can do them quicker. I just have to accept a bit of a different standard or a bit of a different way of doing things. So in considering what time is left for me to finish this job, let's start with the sails, because that's where I left off in my last video. We suddenly decided that a painter was coming and someone cancelled, and so what was going to be in 2 or 3 weeks time, the painter coming, was suddenly within just 2 or 3 or 4 days. So I've got 4 large panels. There's a lot of work left to do on them, but a lot of that work entails really long sewing lengths, which I just haven't got the space for. So I'm getting pushed for time, so I've talked to a sailmaker, and he thinks it'll be a day or two to finish off these sails. We'll see about that. Or maybe I didn't tell him all the details, so he may have underestimated that. I hope not. It's not really in my budget to put money into the sails, more money into the sails, but that's, if I want to go sailing this summer, that's something I can just take to the sailmaker. I'll come back finished, except possibly for the battens, and that'll be really good. Usually scooter down to the shed, which sure helps speed things up. It's only gone wrong once, and I was a bit lucky. You probably won't notice the difference, but I painted the front of the shed last weekend. Just before I started the sail making, I was working on the interior here. I had to suddenly stop with what my doctor thought was a lung infection. I don't know if it was caused by the wood dust, or really at the end of the day I just don't know. Well, I do know I got better, fortunately, because I was really worried there for a bit. I'm not used to being unhealthy. So anyway, I had to drop the interior. I was putting these redwood cleats in. So finishing these off as tanks or storage. The saloon berths, there's foam going on the top of these. So that's left to do on the interior on both sides. Same down aft with the quarter berths. There's similar process to do. I may be putting pipes through underneath, a pipe for the wiring to go up forward, just to keep it clean and tidy. I don't want to run it along here, which I've run wiring in other boats along. In the galley, there's not a lot to do. There's the seal around the galley bench. There's some cupboards to do with sliding doors on the side. In the head area, I've got to make some retaining holders for the composting toilet. That area, I could do a lot more work there and add a lot of things, but I'll keep it fairly simple for now. There's a step to do for the companionway there, so I don't know if I'd include that in the interior, but there's the windows to put in. That shouldn't be too huge a job. So for all that, I've allowed for 3 weeks. Is it ambitious? Maybe. I don't know how I can shorten that job. I'll certainly try to without compromising the job too much. I've allowed a week for the rest of the sanding and finishing off the satin interior as I've done up here. It's a 2-pot coating, so I'll be doing the same for the rest of the boat on the interior, and I've only been putting on 1 coat for now. I think I might get away with that if I put it on thick enough. It doesn't seem to run too easily, so all good. I'm after a satin finish. 3 weeks. Well, the electrical, it's a combined 48 volt, 12 volt system. 48 volts for the heavy users like the induction cooker, the upward, the winch up here, that'll do a lot of the deck work. A lot of the paneling will go here, and the units inside here, like the DC, the solar charger, etc. So I hope to make this a nice area of electrical work. The 48 volt battery goes here. The solar panel has to be connected up to the charger, to the battery. Have to run wiring down for the upward, of course. So it's not an insignificant amount, but I've allowed 2 weeks for that, and maybe some of it isn't essential for getting the boat in the water, but probably 80% is. The 20% might be things like lighting. I can get away without that for a little while, till I want to do a decent trip away and stay over on the boat overnight. 2 weeks. Plumbing. It's going to be quite simple to begin with anyway. It's just a hose to run up to a faucet in the galley bench. There's a foot pump to pump the water out of the 20 litre containers, one of which will be under the galley. There's a vent for the head, 50mm I think it's going to be, that I have to run to the aft of the boat and out the transom there. What else in the way of plumbing? Not a lot at all. So that may be a bit much for that job, but I've allowed a week for that job. Back on the interior, I didn't mention the squabs. I was going to make them myself, of course. What's not essential is that they're covered at this point, so I may just buy the foam for that and put something over them, but do the upholstery later. So I was going to allow 2 weeks for making the squabs, so I think I can pretty much eliminate that from the time if I just buy the foam. That bird you can hear twittering way outside is the New Zealand tui bird, also called a parson's bird because it's got a white tuft under its neck. Stainless steel work. These are the stands for the solar panel on the aft end of the boat, and there's not much work to do to mount them, but attach them as the push bit. The push bits are hardly much work at all. There's 1 or 2 stanchions to make and the pulpit. So altogether for the stainless steel work I've allowed about a week. Fairing. Well, there's quite a bit to do. The bulk of it's been done, except for, of course, the cabin and the decks.
Doing that all day?
A lot of them will have non-skid on, so they certainly don't have to be perfect. When I was building my 60-foot yacht, I said, right, I'm going to fair this hull in a month, and I'm only going to do 1 week on each corner of the boat. And that's what I did. And people used to think it was fiberglass. It wasn't perfect, but it was a great example of don't get too carried away. I could have spent 3 times the amount of work on the fairing of that boat, and so I'm not going to get too carried away with this boat, but I've allowed 4 weeks for it. Painting, same thing again. You can spend a lot of time painting, getting things just right, and I think being close to just right is good enough. I still may spray the boat. The bottom's been done. The top sides have not been finished. That dark grey colour is basically, I've used it for an undercoat, but it'd be close to what the finishing colour is, with a coat or two of clear over the top of that for UV protection. And once again, if I rolled it, I don't know about tipping it, but if I rolled it, it's going to be slightly orange peely, and it may just be good enough. I've allowed 2 weeks for the painting, which I think will work. The trailer. Well, I've got most of the bits and pieces for the trailer. I haven't got the steel lengths yet. That's not a biggie, but I've got most bits for it, and they're here. So it's steel work, which is something I'm quite familiar with and have most of the equipment for. So I'm allowing 2 weeks for the steel work, and part of that will be taking the trailer for galvanizing. If I do galvanize it, I may just decide to paint it. That would probably be a mistake, but I can always galvanize it later on. So I've allowed 2 weeks for that. The mast and rigging, the tabernacle, is a bit hard to estimate exactly what it will take, the tabernacle. I've got to make bearings for the mast. At the bottom end of the mast, once again, I'm a fitter and turner by trade, so that shouldn't be a biggie. But, and I think I've worked out how I'm going to make them. They have to be really good, of course. There's stories around about them not being very good because, for example, I probably won't use Delrin rollers, ball bearings, because they apparently can get crushed a little bit under high load. They're not really made for high load unless there's enough of them. So there's a lot of work in that, and that could include the wishbones, because I still think I'm going for the wishbones. So I would say that's a good 4 weeks work. And of course we can't forget about the rudder stock, the rudder itself, which would be a daggerboard style of rudder. And I had dreams of putting a trim tab on the back of it, and I still may. I may end up with 2 rudders, one without a trim tab, which I may build first. And it's a balanced rudder, by the way. It'll have a 70% lead on it, but it's done in an interesting way, which you'll see when I build the boat. The angle of the bearings go through the blade and give some balance. Anyway, I've allowed 2 weeks for the rudder. I hope that's not ambitious. Last but not least on the list is the daggerboard, which you can see is mostly made. There is the bulb to attach to that. I've got the bolts already. I do have to drill holes and tap the lead, which I saw a very good example of on Sailing Uma recently, where they tapped holes in the lead, and that got the commenters going because they didn't really understand the process of making the thread in the lead a lot deeper than you'd use for a nut. But according to Herreshoff, that's I think it's 8 times the depth of a nut that you put into the lead, and it's as good as a nut. So that's the last job, and once the bulb's on the bottom, I've got to paint it all, and it probably won't be fitted into the boat until the very last thing when I get the boat outside. So I've allowed a week for that. Well, that was a bit sobering. I've just added up that list that I've just given you. We have 19 weeks till Christmas, and it looks like, going by the numbers I gave you, I have 23 weeks of work. So something's got to give. And I've had another quick look over some of these numbers. Interior, 3 weeks. Possibly I could do that in half the time. Interior, satin finish. I've already done inside the cabin, under the decks. So, and I did that when the boat was upside down, so that was great. 1 week, I think I could cut that in half. Fairing, 4 weeks. I really don't know. It's a physical thing as well, so I might have to balance it with some other work. I do have a slight shoulder issue, which I've got to nurse a little bit. Painting, 2 weeks. Not really, because painting preparation is basically a lot on the fairing as well. So maybe I can cut that down a bit. A big one is the mast, the rigging, making the bearings, all the stuff for the tabernacle, etc. 4 weeks, don't know. Hopefully it's a bit less. Anyway, I might have to get used to the idea that I'm not going to finish in time. For sailing at Christmas, it may be a late summer sail. There's other unknowns, like how much work am I going to have to do around the property to keep it in a state ready for sail, or get it up to a state ready for sail, for that matter. There's quite a few jobs to do. There's a bit of decking, there's a bit of roof painting. So I'll try and do those jobs in the weekend. Anyway, wish me luck, and certainly in the comments, write if you think I've overestimated or underestimated things, or you have any suggestions to get this job done as quickly as possible, because we all want to see this boat go sailing soon, right? So anyway, if you've made it this far, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.